Hello and welcome to Wild Earth Ways. I'm Kat, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you my thoughts as I'm deciding to give away some of my decks and simplify my deck collection. And as I was doing this, making the decisions about which decks I wanted to perhaps give away and which decks I want to give it another try, it got me thinking about tarot collecting, my tarot collection, and I decided to make a video sharing some thoughts about that here. Now, as I'm recording this, it's a very hot sunny day, and the birds are singing, the breeze is blowing in the trees. I hope that the sound is pleasant and not too disturbing. Actually, it kind of fits with my first card that I wanted to talk about today, which is this one, the Nine of Pentacles. So when I was thinking about my deck collection, I, as often, was using tarot cards to kind of help me think about my deck collection and what it means to me. And this card came to mind, the Nine of Pentacles. I really like the Nine of Pentacles card in the Waite-Smith Tarot. This particular deck is the Universal Waite version of the traditional Waite-Smith, and this is my personal favorite Waite-Smith deck. So this is the one I use when I'm working with like the RWS images, and this one isn't going anywhere. It's one of my favorite decks, so don't worry. I just pulled it out for a few images to explain some thoughts that I had about deck collecting. And first of all, how having a collection of decks is something that brings a lot of joy, a lot of pleasure. The decks are both a resource for learning, for teaching me new ideas, and also something simply to enjoy. And I think that having a deck collection can be a very positive thing, especially, a beautiful curated deck collection. It's really special. So I just want to clarify right from the start that although I will be giving away a few decks, I do not have any problem at all with building a deck collection, a tarot deck collection, oracle deck collection. This is not something that I wish to be critical of in any shape or form. I think it's something that can bring a lot of pleasure, it can have value, and it's not something which I wish to suggest any kind of criticism of, just like I'm not criticizing the decks themselves just because they don't work for me at this time. So having this collection of decks can be something to enjoy, something to give a sense of groundedness, to connect me with the natural world, in fact, in many respects, because of the decks which I tend to gravitate towards. But what I don't want to feel is overwhelmed. So going from this to this, that sense of not knowing what to work with next, which is the correct deck to give my attention to at this time, that kind of Seven of Cups energy of feeling overwhelmed and confused by too many choices. Now, I'm actually somebody who, although I'm not a minimalist by any means, I do enjoy simplicity. So I do enjoy having like a particular fountain pen that I use when I'm writing and a particular journal that I write in, rather than a wide range of choices. Sometimes choice is great, and especially with decks, as I'll try and talk about shortly, bringing in new messages, new ideas is fantastic, but sometimes choice can also feel kind of overwhelming. And that's something which I try to avoid. And certainly I don't want my collection to feel like this, to feel like a burden, right? So that kind of 10 of Wands energy of having something to carry. There's no reason why it should feel this way. It's not like we have to carry around our decks all the time. But at the same time, I thought this image kind of communicates a sense of having a weight that you have to carry, which can sometimes come, for me, from having too many things to work with. Now, I currently have a collection which I'm very happy with. Definitely the energy is more here. And that's because I've gone through phases of exploring and buying new decks. So I would say that I was buying decks the most around the years 2021, 2022. Before those years, I had been a very, very long time with just 2 decks. The RWS and a reproduction of the Visconti's Forza, which I bought over 20 years ago. And then around 2021, 2022, I discovered the wide variety of decks which are out there and started to explore them, looking for ones that would suit me and suit my practice. And I was very lucky to find a number of decks which really speak to me very clearly. And so I chose the Page of Pentacles for this experience of getting a new deck that you can learn from, and it's communicating all sorts of interesting messages and showing new paths with the tarot. And I'm very happy to have found a number of decks which speak to me very clearly in this way. And specifically, I found them thanks to TarotTube, that I saw them on TarotTube and thought this could be a deck that would work for me, and was then able to add them to my collection. And I think this card speaks to me of that kind of newness, the newness of exploring a new deck, and how fun that is, and how it can teach you for a certain period of time. Not all decks which I've bought then continue to sing to me in this way. I would say that, there are certain decks which speak to me very clearly, and that I find a lot of value in time after time, including this one, the Universal Weight. And other ones, over time, kind of lose that shiny new excitement. I start to feel like actually I don't connect that well with this deck. And this is the point at which I start thinking about giving away the deck. Now, when I say giving away the deck, this is because I do not live somewhere where there is a second-hand deck market. There isn't really any option of selling them online. Our postal system is a disaster. I wouldn't be able to kind of effectively use our postal system for selling decks because it's so expensive, it's so slow and so unreliable, unfortunately. So what I do when I no longer have a place for a deck in my collection is I simply wait until I'm going to visit my parents in England or visit Europe, and I donate it to a charity shop when I'm there. So the decks which I'm putting aside now to leave, I will hold on to until the summer holiday when I can go and visit my parents in England, and I will be donating them when I am there. And that way also, by giving them to Oxfam, I hope that the money can be used to help people who certainly need it more than myself. So now another reason, other than kind of overwhelm, too many choices, that I choose to keep my deck collection simple is, for me, tarot is a hobby. It's not my profession. It's a fun hobby that I enjoy. And I enjoy the activity of reading, studying, and learning a deck. For me, the hobby is not in itself deck collection. I think that that's a perfectly valid hobby. Actually, on the internet these days, I see a lot of discussion about hobbies and how valuable it is to have a hobby, something that we do outside of work for our own choice, where we're developing a skill or maybe creating something. And a collection is something that you create. It's something that you create. It takes work and it has value. And so that completely makes sense to me. And at the same time, my personal tarot hobby is in the using of the decks. And I've given this some thought because I've often asked myself, why do I want to keep my deck collection limited when my book collection is really huge and has not really been limited traditionally? So I think I probably have over 1,000 books, but at the same time I have read almost all of those. So I've read the books which are mine, not necessarily my husband's books or my children's books, but on the whole I have read almost all of my books. And when I then put them on the shelf, I feel like the task is complete. I don't need to reread it. I do keep them within mind that I might reread them in the future, and I do often reread books and enjoy rereading, but it's a task which is already completed. Whereas with a tarot deck, I do feel like the task is kind of never complete because every reading can be so different. And so the decks on my shelf are kind of calling to me to pick them up and read them again. I think that it would be perfectly possible to have the deck on the shelf and think, it's like a book. I've read it once, kind of looked through all the images, and now keep the collection, the deck itself, as like a mini art collection on the shelf, similarly to a book. And yet somehow, as I am right now, as I am currently, I do see the decks as something to work with and something which is kind of on my to-do list. And for me, the hobby of tarot is very much about the use of the decks. And when I find a deck that really sings to me, then I feel it is quite a special relationship. Like I chose the Hermit and the High Priestess cards to represent this. The idea of having guidance, of having a sort of a friend or a source of wisdom, guidance in life, which can come from a deck that really speaks very clearly to you. And this is the ideal. It's not something that I necessarily achieve, but I see it as the ideal in using a tarot deck. And it follows from that some of the decks which I've brought in, I have understood over time, it's not really working that way, and I have other ones which I prefer to spend my time with, and for that reason I've chosen a few decks which I'm going to be giving away. I keep hesitating over the word declutter. I am going to use the word declutter in the title to this video because I think it's clear to people what is meant by declutter. But at the same time, to me, I always hesitate because it just seems so insulting to the decks to label them as clutter. I really don't think of them as clutter, just as I don't think of books as clutter, for example. So if I do use this word declutter, it really isn't meant to be at all insulting or derogatory towards the decks, which I am going to move out of my collection. But perhaps it is kind of the simplest word to use. I know we all understand what is meant by it, but at the same time, I just want to be clear that I do not consider any of my decks to be clutter. Okay, so I think maybe without further ado, it would be a good time to get into the decks, which I'm talking about rehoming. Now, the first one is this one, The Priestess of Light Oracle by Sandra Ann Taylor and Kimberly Weber. This is a really difficult decision for me, and I've kind of gone backwards and forwards. And since I know I won't be able to declutter my decks until July, I do think there's a possibility I could go backwards and forwards on this one again. This Oracle deck I have used a fair bit, and I do think the artwork is stunning. So the artist is Kimberly Weber. Her paintings are beautiful. The keywords are very clear. We have a title and then an expansive keyword, and then there's a further description in the guidebook. So something that is very clear in this deck is that all of the figures depicted are very beautiful. They're all stunning, and I don't have any problem with beautiful decks. I actually like beautiful decks, and many of the decks which I connect with very strongly have almost uniformly beautiful figures. So Shadowscapes is an obvious example, or the Field Tarot. And yet there's something about these characters where they kind of look like they could be on Instagram. So they've got a kind of modern, realistic beauty, very statuesque. They're all kind of dramatic, natural body types. So they could be kind of models. And I mean, that's fine. It's absolutely fine, of course. But for some reason, at this time, it's kind of interfering with my ability to take in the messages on the deck. So I don't know. I think that's kind of a criticism of myself and not of this beautiful deck. But somehow I am not connecting with it anymore. So I did actually go through a period of time where I liked and enjoyed using this deck. and then I went through a long period of time not using it and somehow haven't reconnected with it. And it also has to do with kind of keywords like this, telepathy. It's not clear to me what to get from that. Even something like shamanic journey, it's not part of my practice. And I do think that somebody else could get a lot from it. So if I donate it, I don't think I'm really gonna particularly miss it, and somebody else may get pleasure from it. Now, one reason why I think that I wouldn't so much miss it is because I have this deck. So this is the Angels and Ancestors card with cards with artwork by Lily Moses, by Kyle Gray. This deck means a lot to me. It's one of the first decks which I got, and I feel like a strong connection with the characters in the cards. Actually, just the one from the cover, you can kind of maybe see what I'm talking about. It's something about the way the characters look at you, their warm gazes. They feel like friendly towards you. Whereas in this deck, I actually feel more distance from the characters in the cards. And I feel like that's what's interfering with my use of the deck. So I would prefer to turn to this deck for similar kind of purposes. So that's why I'm going to be putting the Priestess of Light deck into the Rehoming pile after a lot of thought, probably too much thought. I have a tendency to overthink almost everything, and certainly these kind of decisions I end up thinking about far more than really is necessary. So the next deck I decided to rehome is this one, The Secrets of Wonderwood. It's another Oracle deck, although this one is an indie deck. So Priestess of Light is mass market, published by Hay House. This one is an indie deck. I bought it from the creators directly off Etsy, and they have a lovely shop there on Etsy and a very good service. The Secrets of Wonderwood is a very cute little Oracle deck. These are the adorable backs, and I'll flick through a few cards to show you what it's like. It's an unusual deck. So the deck is set in this fictional forest full of odd little characters, and each card does have a keyword, but sometimes it isn't clear what's the connection between the keyword and the image. So here we have believe, and we have like a little hut and a witch on a boat on a mini lake under the full moon. Or for example, this one, be surprised. We've got some mushrooms and a candle on a tree stump. So to find out the connection between the keyword and the image, you turn to the book, and in the book for every card there is a little story, a really nicely written little story with a message. Now my original intention in buying this deck was that it would be one that I could share with my children, or more specifically my younger son, and we did do that a little bit, but I quickly found that it was perhaps a little young for him, and he was not as kind of taken by it as somebody perhaps younger would have been, or he himself when he was younger might have been. Now I think the deck is lovely, the artwork is so sweet, and the messages are really nice. So I did think about just keeping it, because it's like a kind of like a storybook on the shelf. But to be honest, I do think that somebody else might get more from this, and so it's worth donating. One thing which I think is the issue for me personally with this deck is that I do like to use cards as inspiration for storytelling. And so I initially thought that this would be great for that. But the problem is that the authors themselves have done this so well and so completely. So for every card, you have a story written, and that kind of blocks me from writing my own. And so it doesn't quite have a place in my personal practice for that reason. So again, with absolutely no criticism meant to the deck, which I think is a lovely deck, I think that somebody else can get more from The Secrets of Wonderwood than me at this stage. Alright, so the next deck which I am gonna be donating is this one, the reproduction of the Visconti Forza 15th century tarot deck. And I talked about this in my previous video, so I won't say much here. I have had this deck a long time. I got it over 20 years ago when I was studying medieval history, and just got it for the sake of the artwork and for the interest as a kind of historical artifact. I never read with this deck, and I'm not interested in doing so. And the truth is, I don't actually like the artwork all that much, so I'm not going to be looking at the artwork of this deck just for pleasure of looking at beautiful images like I might with some of my other decks. And if I want to see what a 15th century deck looked like, I can easily see reproductions online. I don't need a physical copy for that. In addition, in terms of like remembering that time in my life, I have many, many books from that period of time. And I have my own, thesis that I wrote. I don't need more things to remember that period of time. So this deck I decided already to part with. Now, another deck I decided to give away is this edition of The Witch's Wisdom. Now, if you have watched my videos before, you'll know I love The Witch's Wisdom tarot deck. Don't worry, this is obviously not my original edition of the deck. So this deck is the new edition, the standard size tarot deck edition, and as you can see, it's still wrapped in plastic. So what happened here? Basically, I heard that The Witch's Wisdom was being republished in standard size, and I thought, fantastic, I will pick up a copy of that because the original version, which I do appreciate so much, is large. It's quite a large format. The cards are quite bulky and heavy. And I figured if I have a standard size deck, I would be able to take that out and about with me in walks in the forest, trips into nature, and so on. But if you take a look, you can quickly see this is a standard tarot size, and you can see that this is bigger. It's still much bigger and much thicker. So there's the thickness of this deck, and there's the thickness of this deck. So what actually happened is that they have have kept the cards exactly the same and simply reissued them in a smaller size box, which I didn't realize at the time when I pre-ordered this deck. So because of where I live and how long things take to ship to here, I didn't receive this deck until after I saw a walkthrough on another channel on YouTube showing that the cards are actually the same as the original cards. And at that point, I couldn't cancel my order. It had already shipped. And for me, there's no point in trying to send something back. At this point, the cost of the postage would just make it pointless, basically. So when I received it, having seen this video, I just kept it in its wrapping, and I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll just keep it as a backup. It's not doing any harm just sitting in a drawer. But the truth is, I already have a backup of The Witch's Wisdom, so I already own 2 copies of that deck. The reason is that I got the original deck and I used it so much, really enjoyed using it, and I decided to buy a second copy so that I could put up some of the artwork on my wall. And then when I got the second copy, I actually didn't do that. Instead, I ordered a print directly from the artist, a couple of prints, and we put those up rather than putting up cards. So I still do have a backup copy of this deck, and having a third backup copy really seems a little unnecessary. So I think this one can be given away. And that's The Witch's Wisdom Tarot by Fuzz Carrot and Danielle Barlow, an absolutely beautiful deck. I am always meaning one of these days to do a kind of video deep dive into that deck. If you're interested, please do let me know, and I'll try and get onto that. So I have a couple of tarot decks that I've been humming and hawing over whether or not to keep them. and have not yet really made a clear decision on that. And one of them is this one. You may recognize the backs. This is the Tarot of the Hidden Realm by Julia Jeffrey. The artwork in this deck is beautiful. Well, actually, I don't care for that card, but on the whole, the artwork is very beautiful in this deck. Look at that Empress, so lovely. I actually have 2 prints of this from this deck that I bought from the artist's Etsy shop on the wall in this room. I really do think it's gorgeous. So the prints I have up are, I'll see if I can find them actually so I can show you in the card form. This King of Pentacles is also a favourite. I think that's absolutely gorgeous. So these are the 2 cards which I have as prints, the 4 of Cups and the Ace of Wands. And that's because I love foxes. Foxes are very important to me, and also Selkies. So I connect quite strongly with the story of the Selkie, who is a character kind of between 2 worlds, between the world of the water and the earth world of humans. I have a video talking about these things, about shapeshifters in tarot. So I think I talked about this card in particular in that video, if I remember correctly. And yet, while there are many beautiful images in the deck, and I think that Julia Jeffries is an incredibly talented artist, I also bought a print of this card, although I haven't used it yet. I was thinking of using it for decorating a finished notebook at some point. The problem is that the deck doesn't read well for me. I don't find it to be an inviting reader. I wonder if it's a little bit similar to the issue I have with the Priestess of Light, in the sense that I don't feel like invited in somehow in these cards. I kind of feel like the world is complete, and something about it is perhaps hostile is too strong a word, but not super inviting. So I don't read with the deck, and for now I can't bring myself to part with it either. I think for now I'm just going to put this one on the shelf and try to treat it like a book. So a deck where I appreciate the art and I appreciate the artist's intentions with the deck, but it's not one that I read with. I would be really interested to know from you if you have decks like that. Also, do you have decks where you like the art and you keep it for the art, but you don't intend to read with the deck? So in making these decisions about which decks to declutter, I'm trying to ask myself these questions. 1, do I use it? And the answer for this one would be no, I don't. 2, do I want to use it in the future? No, not really. I don't particularly want to use it in the future. 3, does it make me feel bad? And now this one is very kind of emotional. I definitely have had decks which do kind of make me feel bad. And I would say that the Visconti's Forza is an example of that, where something about the deck makes me feel uncomfortable. And I don't know if that's connected with memories from the time when I got it, or if it's something about the imagery itself, which I think it could well be, like what I associate with that kind of medieval imagery makes me feel uncomfortable. And so it kind of does answer yes to does it make me feel bad. This deck, on the other hand, not really. I don't really have any strong feelings about it. It doesn't really make me feel bad. Now the next question, question 4, is does it spark joy? Now I'm sure you are familiar with the does it spark joy question from Marie Kondo, the queen of tidying up, and it's pretty easy for me to pick up most of my decks and answer yes. So for example, here's my universal weight. Does it spark joy? Yes, absolutely it does. And similarly, I think this is why I have so many books, because they unequivocally spark joy for me. Now this deck, on the other hand, as a whole, I can't say that it really sparks joy. Like this card here, I feel basically neutral towards, But this card, the Three of Wands, I think is beautiful, absolutely stunning. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Again, this one I just don't feel anything about it. Similarly, this one, I think that's why overall, on the whole, I can't really say that it sparks joy. But then I have question 5, the last question. How would I feel about giving it away? And I would feel pretty conflicted because I would think maybe I might want to see this deck again in the future. That's a lovely image, for example. Don't like that one. That's okay. Love the Ten of Wands in this deck. What an amazing image she chose for this. I just think that's so clever. So, you know, I think it's a deck which has a lot of value. And so for now, I'm going to keep it. And probably I'm going to put this one into the storage cupboard for now. So it doesn't feel like a task on the shelf. Unless I can just kind of wrap my head around just keeping it on the shelf, kind of like I would an art book. And that's the Tarot of the Hidden Realm, who has a pouch in my collection, but I actually do keep it in the original big box as well. Now, I had a similar kind of line of thought with this one, the Ostara Tarot, in that there are cards which I think are stunning in this deck, and there are other cards which just do nothing for me at all. And I did talk about this deck in my previous video, so I won't talk about it at length here. There are some beautiful images in this card, in this deck. And I think, as everyone knows, there are 4 different artists, 4 different art styles. And I think many people who get this deck find that they connect with one of the artists more than another. And the interesting thing is that I've seen other people's videos on this deck and noticed that they actually like images which I don't like. And so I think my favorite suits are the swords and the pentacles. But I've seen other people who love the wands or the cups, which are my less preferred suits in this deck. Like this Empress, for example, I have seen people saying how much they love this image, and I get it, it's gorgeous. I love this bird's nest in her hair, and yet for me, it doesn't feel like the Empress. She's just so young and slender and just seems not Empressy to me. So, whereas the Emperor has got a kind of Emperor energy. So it's a confusing deck, essentially. But when I go through those 5 questions, do I use it? No. Do I want to use it in the future? No. Does it make me feel bad? No. No, it doesn't make me feel bad. It doesn't make me feel uncomfortable. So that's not like a mark against it, I guess. Does it spark joy? No, not really. And how would I feel about giving it away? Fine. I don't really feel anything much at all about giving it away. And so this one, I've come to realize, is a kind of easy decision. I don't need this deck. I bought this deck when I was exploring lots and lots of different decks and trying to find ones that would connect with my storytelling practice in particular. It hasn't worked out. So I'm gonna put this one in the donate pile. And that is the Ostara Tarot, which is mass market and easily available. Were I to change my mind, although I doubt that I would change my mind about it. I have occasionally given away books and then kind of regretted it and had to buy the book again. And that's happened to me, especially with classics, which I've decided to reread. But as yet, it hasn't happened to me with the deck, but that could just be because I've been reading for books all my life, whereas decks intensively only in the past 5 years, I suppose. Now I have one last deck to talk about, which is this one, the Elemental Power Tarot, because at one point this was on my donate pile, simply because I don't use it. So this is the guidebook written by Melinda Rehoming, and it's very well written. I think there's a lot of interesting insights in the guidebook, and these are the backs, which are stunning. I love this octopus back, and it's one of the reasons I bought this deck. The other reason is because I am interested in elemental readings of tarot. I would like to try incorporating elements into my reading, and to some extent with the Witch's Wisdom I do. The elemental tarot though is more based on, I would say, elements plus numerology perhaps. I'm not really sure if I'm saying that, if I'm accurate there or not, because I don't know the deck well enough. But it's like this, the majors are scenes in which you, the reader, can step into the scene. I thought this would be quite inspirational for storytelling, and yet somehow it hasn't worked out that way, but that could just be lack of use. And then the minors are pippish. So you have the element, so here in the cups you have this water background, and then you have the items arranged basically haphazardly, as far as I can tell. Like, there's the Nine of Cups. Why are they like that? I don't know. I can't see any connection between how those cups are laid out and how I read the Nine of Cups, compared to with this layout on the Eight of Cups, which is very different. So it kind of is challenging me to read the cards in a different way than what I'm used to reading, because I can't really see the connection between this and my usual interpretation of the Eight of Cups connected with walking away. And then the court cards are like this. They have these, I'm not quite sure what's going on with my organization. Like, I thought I had the deck in order, but I've clearly mixed it up at some point. But the court cards are like this. They are crowns, and they are crowns. So you have different crowns for different figures in the court card. Now, if you're looking at this, is it clear who we've got? Well, you have to look at the elements. So we've got a crown, we've got fire for the wands, and we've got air. So this is the King of Wands. And I do really like this concept of putting on the crown and kind of becoming the King of Wands with that fire and air energy. Very, very potent, very fiery. In theory, I think the deck is really interesting. Like I said, I had trouble reading it. Like if we take this Five of Swords, for example, it's just not clear to me. I guess I don't tend to read numerologically. I do read according to the Waite-Smith kind of readings fundamentally, or by looking at what I see on the card. And here, I don't see a lot. I see Five Swords in the clouds. So yeah, I haven't essentially learned how to connect with this deck. However, when I go through my questions, do I use it? No. Do I want to use it in the future? Well, actually, yeah, I would be interested in using this deck in the future. Does it make me feel bad? No. Does it spark joy? No, not really. How would I feel about giving it away? I would feel that that's like, it's potentially one I might regret giving away, in the sense that it's not bothering me, and I am interested in working with it in the future. So I'm going to keep this one on the shelf, and maybe I'll get to it in the summer. I think it's got quite summery energy, so maybe I will get to pick it up at some point in the future, and then I'll find out whether I can work with these kind of minors or not. So that's the Elemental Power Tarot, which I'm deciding to give a kind of second chance. Now, I would be really interested if you have any questions that you use when deciding whether to declutter a deck or give a deck a second try. Perhaps I could have included, like, do I have something similar in my collection already? The answer to that would often be no, because I don't have a huge collection, but sometimes there could be a factor, like I saw with the Priestess of Light Oracle, for example. I'll put my questions in the comments below this video. So that is where I've reached with my deck declutter this time, and I thought it would be interesting to go through the numbers of my collection to see like how many decks I have currently. And then I do actually keep a kind of running list of my decks. So it's kind of interesting to see how the deck collection grows or shrinks at different times. And maybe you guys would be interested in the numbers. This is not to suggest at all that there are like correct numbers for the size of a collection. I really don't think that at all. Like I said, for my books, it's in the hundreds. So, and that doesn't bother me. And I don't really care if anyone's going to judge me for that or not. And it should be the same for decks. But for me, decks are kind of tasks and I don't want to feel overwhelmed. So for this reason, I do keep track of the numbers. Actually, before I get into that, I'll show you what I do with books, because I do also keep kind of a list for books. It isn't an attempt to make an inventory of my books. I've never attempted that. That would be crazy. But I do keep a list of books which I currently have unread and ready that I wish to read. So this is my current list that I'm working with. I wrote this list in my Hobonichi cousin journal. I didn't actually write it on this day. I wrote it after I'd received some books for my birthday and after I'd just recently returned from a visit to England. And you can see that I have, since I wrote that list, ticked off most of them. So I still have, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books on my shelf that I have yet to read. Now this journal I keep as my reading and poetry journal. If you'd be interested in seeing more about my journaling, let me know. I'm kind of thinking about making a video about those things at some point in the future. So this is my list of books to read. So it's kind of like my task list when it comes to books. Okay, so getting into the tarot numbers. Let's see. I currently have a total of 24 tarot decks, and that's not all my decks though. I have currently 24 decks which I would say are in use, but I also have 2 decks which I have stored which are not in use. One of those is the Visconti Forza, and the other one is my very first tarot deck, which is a classic RWS, and I don't use it. It's a little hard to explain why I don't use it. Basically, it doesn't have very good energy for me because of the associations I have with that deck. So it's just kept because it was my first ever deck, but at the same time, I don't use it. And then I also have, I have 6 duplicate decks. So this is where it kind of gets a little bit funny. I have actually got 4 different copies of the Shadowscape, so one of them's included there, and then I have another 3 here. So those Shadowscapes decks are either in different languages or different formats. So I have 2 different English formats, and then I also have a French and a Czech version of Shadowscapes. And then I have those 2 Witch's Wisdom backups, of which I'm going to give away 1. And then in addition, I have a backup of the Wildwood Tarot. And I bought that because I thought I was going to use it like a calendar, but I didn't. So there we go. It's just sitting in the cupboard, not used. So I do have those duplicates. And then I also have Oracle decks. So actually, let's say that means that I have a total of 32 tarot decks. And then Oracle decks, I have 16. I don't have any duplicate backup Oracle decks currently. Who knows? One day perhaps. But then I'm going to be rehoming 2 of those tarot decks. So that's going to be 22, and 1 of the stored ones. So that's going to be just 1 in storage. 1 of my duplicates. So that's going to be 5 duplicates. So my tarot decks are coming down to 28, and I'm just getting rid of 2 Oracle decks. So they're coming down to 14, which then means that I have a total number of decks in my collection of 42. Oh, a good number. So I'm not particularly aiming for any particular number in my collection. It's not like I'm thinking it should stay below 50 or something like that. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't have any particular plan around that. Although I do remember when I first got into buying tarot decks, thinking that, 10 would be a lot. And it quite quickly shot over 10 and then over 20. And here we are. And like I say, I think that's fine. But at the same time, I like to keep it in a range that feels manageable to me. So if you've watched to here, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope that it's been interesting. Like I said, I hope it doesn't come across in any spirit of judgment or criticism, because it surely isn't meant that way. It's just about organizing my collection to suit my practice as best as possible. And for that reason, I settled on these decks going into the cupboard to hopefully find a home in which somebody's going to enjoy using them in the future. So thank you again for watching. I hope to see you back here again soon. And in the meantime, I wish you all the very best wherever you are. Bye.